It was a time of great prosperity, a time when the land of Sodom, nestled in the fertile plains of the Jordan Valley, flourished with abundance. The city shone like a gem under the sun, its streets bustling with activity, its people adorned in wealth. Yet behind this facade of grandeur lay a city consumed by darkness, moral decay and corruption beyond comprehension. Sodom was no ordinary city. Its people were known not only for their indulgence in worldly pleasures, but for acts of cruelty, injustice, and shamelessness that defied even the basic principles of humanity. They taunted the laws of nature and went against the moral fabric intended for mankind. Theft, deceit, and exploitation were common practices. They attacked travelers and the vulnerable, leaving no room for compassion or righteousness. In the midst of this city of chaos, there stood a man who was different, a man chosen by God to guide the people away from their sinful ways. This man was Prophet Lot, Lut in Arabic, a nephew to Prophet Abraham. Lot had been sent to Sodom as a messenger, tasked with calling its people back to the path of truth, the path of righteousness. Lot, peace be upon him, stood amidst the corruption and pleaded with his people. "O my people," he would say, "why do you commit such shameful acts, acts that no one before you has done in all of creation?" He reminded them of their duty to worship and obey God, urging them to abandon the path of sin that could only lead to destruction. But the people of Sodom were deaf to his pleas. Instead of listening, they mocked him. They taunted him, jeering at his warnings and dismissing him as a madman. They were shameless, even threatening Lot with expulsion if he continued to challenge their depravity. Their arrogance knew no bounds, as they openly defied the natural laws set by God and laughed in the face of divine guidance. Among their greatest crimes was their mistreatment of strangers and travelers who passed through their city. Sodom was infamous for its hostility toward guests, a practice rare and condemnable in the culture of the time. Travelers were subjected to humiliation and harm, contrary to the virtues of hospitality and kindness commanded by all the prophets. Lot, saddened and frustrated by their behavior, continued to persevere. His faith in God gave him the strength to stand firm, even as he faced rejection from his people. For years, he preached the truth, yet only a small handful of believers stood with him, among them his daughters. Even Lot's wife remained tied to the people of Sodom, sympathizing with their ways and ultimately failing to heed her husband's message. The days turned to years, and the sins of the people of Sodom only grew darker. They mocked Lot's words, reveling in their shamelessness. But divine patience is not limitless, and God had finally declared that the time for warnings had passed. The corruption of Sodom had reached a point of no return, and it was decreed that the city would face its day of reckoning. One evening, unassuming visitors arrived at Lot's home. They were travelers in appearance, but they were no ordinary men. They were angels sent by God, disguised in human form. Lot, being the righteous and hospitable man he was, welcomed them into his home. Yet he was uneasy, for he feared the reaction of the people of Sodom. He knew their evil ways all too well and worried for the safety of his guests. It was then that the angels revealed their true identities to Lot. They assured him not to fear, for the time of the people's punishment was near. They instructed Lot to gather his family and flee the city under the cover of night, and most importantly, to never look back. As dawn approached, Lot and his daughters fled the city, leaving behind his wife, who had chosen to stay behind, tied to the fate of Sodom. The angels had warned them that the wrath of God would descend upon the city at sunrise, and so it did. The skies above Sodom darkened, and the earth trembled violently. The heavens opened, and stones of baked clay rained down upon the city with a force unimaginable. Fire and brimstone engulfed Sodom, consuming everything in its path. The lush plains of the Jordan Valley were turned into a desolate wasteland, and the once thriving city was reduced to ruins. Lot and his daughters, safe at a distance, heard and felt the devastation but did not turn back, as they had been commanded. Lot's wife, however, disobeyed the divine warning. Overcome with attachment to the city and its people, she glanced back, and in that moment she was turned into a pillar of salt, a symbol of disobedience and attachment to sin. When the destruction was complete, there was nothing left of Sodom but silence and desolation. The once proud and defiant city was now a stark reminder of the consequences of arrogance, disobedience, and moral decay. What remained was a lifeless expanse, now known to many as the area surrounding the Dead Sea, a lifeless body of water symbolic of the lifelessness of Sodom's legacy. The story of Sodom carries profound lessons for us all. It teaches the importance of humility, obedience, and adherence to moral principles. It reminds us that arrogance and sin lead only to ruin, while faith and righteousness are the true paths to salvation. Prophet Lot's unwavering dedication to his mission, despite the challenges he faced, serves as an example of steadfastness and faith in the face of adversity. Sodom's destruction was not merely an act of punishment, but a divine warning to all of humanity, a warning that continues to echo through the ages. And so the story of Prophet Lot and the city of Sodom reminds us to reflect on our actions, to strive for righteousness, and to turn to God before it is too late. The question remains, will we learn from the fate of Sodom, or will history repeat itself? The choice is ours, but the consequences are eternal.